Uh, what is interesting to me is what has become clear to me is that I grew up in Kenya. So among everyone I looked at looked like me. And so the difference among us was other things that are very central to my identity. So I am, yes, in America, and that's what a lot of Americans will see me as black. But on a totem pole, being black is probably number 10. There are other identity markers to me that are much more important, that are not necessarily seen here. And that's probably when I go home, that's why I feel, oh, I am at home, because you see this in me that an American would not see. And so I don't necessarily respond. I almost forget that I am black till I recognize that, oh, someone is reacting to me because of this. And it's not, does that make sense? It's not an identity marker that is that high on my...
But it is for some other people who are reacting to you.
Yes. And that still catches me by surprise. That is still almost a moment of, oh, right, okay, this is how you're seeing me. This is what you're engaging with first. And here's an example. A couple of years ago, I accompanied a couple of my friends who were both white to VMI, and it was 4th of July, and they were flying all these balloons and what have you. I don't know, they were going to VMI. I didn't really think too much about it, and about an hour into it, I realized, oh, Lord, okay, I am probably the only black person here. But what made me think about that is that I didn't walk in and immediately recognize that I looked different. But what made me realize that is that as we were mingling, I saw this table with all these flags. They were all different variations of Confederate banners. And I was just curious to find out what they were all about. And so I walked up to the table, and the body language of the man and the woman who were sitting behind the table was sort of suspicious. And so I asked them, oh, so what are these flags about? And they asked me, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from Kenya. All right. So then we went on. And I think they asked me maybe once or twice. They needed to know that. And looking back, maybe they needed to. I don't really fully know why they asked that. But they seemed to relax. They engaged my questions more freely after they realized that I was from Kenya. And then at the very end of it, and that's when I realized, oh, okay, their body language reacted to the fact that I was this black person walking into this space of all these Confederate flags, and asking, whoa, what do they mean and what have you? Out of curiosity, I wasn't challenging them. I just wanted to know, what do all these mean? And so when I left afterward, I thanked them for telling me all about it. It was fascinating because then we got into a conversation when they said, they called it the Battle of Northern Aggression, which I thought, are you referring to the Civil War? I mean, they were using all this language that I hadn't heard. And so then I was going back to them and then they said it was not the Civil War. It was the War of Northern Aggression and all this sort of stuff, which is fascinating. And then when I left, they said to me, well, we're not able to talk to black people from here like we did to you. And I was like, oh, why is that? And so I left with that question. And from there on, it just became very clear to me that I may be here, but I'm not of here. Because it is not my history, it is not my culture. And so I recognize, from that moment on, I recognize that there are probably things that happen to me, that people are reacting to me based on race. And my response is to probably think, oh, what an ass, as opposed to thinking that they're being racist. Which is not to say that they haven't received racist things. It probably has happened. But that is not the lens that I will immediately go into, since it's not. Yeah, it's always a thing that I have to sit back and sort of just examine, and especially with an African American, they will very quickly point out, oh, that was a racist person. I'm like, oh, so I'm learning that. I'm learning to see these things, and we'll see. It's still a process of learning. I'm sure it will be for a long time to come.